What a fitting way to close out 2019 for SmackDown. Yet another uneventful episode on Friday. And I hate to sound negative, I really do, but I don't really think there's much of an argument that the show has been significantly worse since the move to Fox a few months ago. And it's not even like the show was lighting the world on fire when they were on USA Network, at least as of earlier on in 2019. There were a lot of shows during that wild card era that were largely forgettable, very meaningless, because it was basically an extension of Raw at that point. But I feel like, and again, this is saying something, the show has been worse since the move to Fox a few months ago. And I'm not even saying that it's Fox's fault, but it feels like for a show that you would think they would want to put forward their best possible effort. Now that they're on a new network in front of many new fans, many new viewers, the ratings are better than they were before, not by much. They were initially, but they've really slowly but steadily decreased over the past number of months. They've stayed higher than they were on USA, but how long that'll be the case, I don't know. Which is honestly kind of amazing, that they may get the same rating that they did on USA on Fox. That's quite impressive, to be honest with you. But it really is impressive that the show has been somehow worse than it was before. Not saying that wasn't possible. Again, the show wasn't terrible before. It wasn't amazing. It was good more often than not. And it's not even an isolated issue with it being the holiday season right now. I could see people arguing, "Oh, you're being too critical of the show. It's the holiday season. Of course, the show is going to be thrown together." This is not an isolated issue. This has been the case now for months. Aside from that first show, the only 3 above-average episodes of SmackDown I feel like I've watched/reviewed since I started doing these isolated SmackDown reviews a few months ago from the Fox era are the debut episode on Fox. The first Friday night in October was a very good show overall. But all things considered, by and large, it was a very good show. Then we had the NXT Invasion, which was a complete coincidence because that was not the originally planned show. Without NXT invading, I don't think we would have gotten as good of a show as we did that night on the 1st of November. And then I remember reviewing the Go Home show for SmackDown right before Survivor Series. And that was also a really good show. So 3 out of 10 shows maybe? Not a very good ratio. This was another very forgettable show. And honestly, I was at the show last week, henceforth no SmackDown review the next day. I went to a Christmas party, Alexis's family Christmas party to be exact, on Saturday night. So I didn't have a chance to break down the show via audio. I didn't even have a chance to review the show in written form for Next Day Wrestling until like fucking Monday. That's how backed up I was on shit. But even that show, I was there. I enjoyed my experience. The main event was good. I thought the Heavy Machinery Revival Miracle on 34th Street fight match was good. I enjoyed, honestly, that was probably the highlight of the night, which is saying something again, which speaks volumes about the rest of the show. But even overall, if you watch from home, it was a pretty ho-hum show. A lot like this one was. So this is my Friday Night SmackDown review for December 27th, 2019. I am Graham G. Matthews. Hope you guys are having a very happy holiday season. It's crazy to think the end of 2019 is coming up in literally days. Like the end of the decade is coming up close. And the decade, let alone the year itself, has passed along really, really quickly. I will actually be at Raw this Monday in Hartford for the final Raw, the final wrestling show, really, of 2019. The final Raw of the decade, the final WWE show of the 2010s. Which is fitting because I was at the last Raw of 2009 10 years ago. Exactly 10 years ago today. I was at the last Raw of that decade, also in that exact same arena. In 2009 on December 28th in Hartford. So, I'm looking forward to being there on Monday. Hopefully that's a better show than this one was, just because SmackDown overall was a pretty forgettable show. Not terrible, but I had a conversation with Alexis after we watched it on Friday that she had said, it was, SmackDown was kind of meh tonight. And I was like, yeah, it was, and it has been since October. Aside from those 3 shows I mentioned earlier, SmackDown has been a completely forgettable show. And this is with the brand split being back. And it's not a case of, then the wild card rule was doing SmackDown favors, because they've had isolated, distinct rosters before, and the show was great. Case in point, back in 2016 when the show first launched, as SmackDown Live on USA, right after the brand split was brought back, SmackDown was the best show in wrestling. Like, even over NXT, I thought SmackDown was killing it week in and week out. And then it kind of hit a bit of a dry spell there for 2017 with Jinder as champion, all that other shit. Need I say no more? Do I need to really say more about that? The answer is no. And then we had 2018 where the show I thought largely improved. I thought SmackDown in 2018 was really the last time the show was maybe not must-see, but like the closest thing to must-see as you can get. I really enjoyed SmackDown last year, and even Alexis said as much, that she had mentioned were the best period of SmackDown since we started dating last summer. Not this past summer, the summer before that was when we first started watching together last year. I thought those were the best times of SmackDown, when you had the roster of AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan and The Miz. You had Baron Corbin was on Raw. You had a lot of good talent. Shinsuke Nakamura. You had Kevin Owens. No, he was on Raw. Samoa Joe, Jeff Hardy. A lot of really good talent there on SmackDown for a long time in 2018 and going into 2019. The New Day, the Usos, we don't really have that much anymore on SmackDown. You have a couple core main event players like Corbin, Reigns, Bryan, and Wyatt. Not really so much Miz. He hasn't really done a lot in 2019, to be honest with you. But that's really about it. There's a bit of a gap there between the main event guys and the mid-card guys. Braun Strowman's there. He could not mean any less than he does right now. I mean, he pinned the Intercontinental Champion on Friday night, but really, what does that mean? You have the New Day, who are doing well. Kofi could have been still a top guy, but they relegated him back to the tag team division. Whether that was the plan or not, pre-Xavier Woods injury, who knows? I would assume yes, because it's not like he really showed much in the way of a singles push before Xavier got hurt. But nonetheless, that's really the story of SmackDown so far. In the last couple months, there's really not much going on. So we kicked off the show with what was supposed to be the triple threat match to determine the number one contender to the WWE, or rather the Universal Championship, at the Royal Rumble. Match never got started. Daniel Bryan made his entrance. Or really, the show kicked off with Elias singing about Lana and Rusev and Lashley and all that other shit. What point that really served, I have no idea. But this show is supposed to kick off with the triple threat match. Bryan was already in the ring. Corbin was on his way down to the ring, cutting a promo, getting heat from the crowd. Good heat, might I add, too. Only to be interrupted by Roman Reigns' music. Now, this was the first time we had seen Roman since his loss to Baron Corbin at the TLC pay-per-view 2 weeks ago. Probably should have felt like a bigger moment, and it probably would have if they had saved it for the main event. Now, the match never got started here. It didn't get started when they tried it again halfway through the show. They finally did it in the main event, and Roman came out at that point too, begging the question, what the fuck was the point of Roman coming out here? What the hell was the point of any of this? It really just wasted time, because they ended up doing the match in the main event as is with Corbin Reigns, or with Corbin, Miz, and Bryan. And Roman got involved again. So they had said that Roman got kicked out of the arena, but he ended up coming back. Really, again, what was the point of this? If he came back during the main event to cost Baron Corbin the win, that would have made the most sense. But they didn't do that. So this was a complete waste of time. We then had a 6-man tag team match pitting Braun Strowman and the New Day against Shinsuke Nakamura, Cesaro, and Sami Zayn. First time I believe we had seen Sami in action on TV since he paired up with Nakamura 4 months ago. I had to look it up on Pro Fight DB. The last televised match that he had was against Cedric Alexander in the first round of the King of the Ring tournament. Sami Zayn has won all of, literally, no joke, 2 matches in 2019. One against Braun Strowman, coincidentally enough, on Raw right before Money in the Bank, albeit with help from McIntyre and Corbin, but he still won. I think it was a Falls Count Anywhere match. Either that or a Last Man Standing match. I think it was Falls Count Anywhere. Right before the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. And then he had won a tag team match with Kevin Owens at the Stomping Grounds pay-per-view against the New Day. Again, coincidentally enough, because he faced all 3 of those guys here in this match. And he lost here, obviously. I think he might have been... No, he wasn't the one that was pinned. It was Nakamura who got pinned by Braun Strowman, which is noteworthy because, obviously Nakamura, in case you forgot, is still the Intercontinental Champion. So I would assume Braun will be contending for that championship sooner rather than later, probably at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, if not the first episode of 2020. I would save it for the pay-per-view because they don't really have many matches for that show on paper, but I could see them absolutely blowing through that match before then. But yeah, Sami Zayn winning all of 2 televised matches in 2019. And yes, he has been a manager for the past 4 months, but he has not been injured. So it's not like he couldn't wrestle. He just hasn't really done much in the ring. He hasn't wrestled since August. And then he also didn't wrestle for the first 4 months of the year because he was out injured. So, again, that's still pretty bad because he didn't win many matches last year either. So, Sami Zayn, I talk about how Braun Strowman is the ultimate loser in WWE. Sami is not far off. Braun could not win a match to save his life. Or rather, I should clarify, he cannot win an important match to save his life. I believe this was his first televised match. He might have had a handicap match after Crown Jewel against the B team, I want to say. Other than that, the guy has not really wrestled much due to an injury that he suffered about a month ago. And then they just weren't using him. He wasn't around for Survivor Series season. He wasn't around for TLC season. But he's back now. It's time for the Royal Rumble. What did he fucking do, da? And he pinned Nakamura. So for whatever that's worth, I would assume he is next in line for a shot at that Intercontinental Championship. Again, for whatever the hell that's worth, because that championship really has not been involved in anything out of the ordinary in a long time. The last real feud Nakamura had was with The Miz, and that was 3 months ago in September. And even that really wasn't much of a feud. Before that, you would have to go back to... God, I mean, he took the title off of Finn Balor, but he wasn't doing much with the championship then. I don't even know if he was at SummerSlam, Nakamura was. I don't even think he was at the pay-per-view. And then, so he won the championship from Balor at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. That wasn't a feud at all. He just beat him for the belt, and that was it. Prior to that, we had Finn Balor and Bobby Lashley going into WrestleMania, and that was a complete waste of time, too, because the championship didn't really feel elevated either in that circumstance. So, anyway, the championship has been a complete afterthought on SmackDown. Braun Strowman pinning the champion really should have meant more than it did. But again, I assume this is being, he's being groomed for a shot at that championship in the not-so-distant future. We then had Carmella and Mandy Rose. So even before we had the match, we had a run-in between Mandy and Sonya backstage after Sonya lost to Carmella last week on the show. Sonya was saying she was too busy signing the programs. And then Michael Cole said calendars later on in the match, so they never really got their shit straight. But she was too busy signing that stuff, apparently, to come down with Mandy to the ring for her match. Obviously, that's bullshit. Sonya really rather wasn't there because Mandy was busy last week with Otis of Heavy Machinery, which is why she didn't accompany Sonya to the ring for her match against Carmella. So they're teasing tension with Fire and Desire. Whether that's the best route to go, who knows? They have done nothing in 2019. Fire and Desire were utterly wasted. Now, I understand not every team can hold the tag team titles, but they really should have done more with these women than they did. I cannot remember one single newsworthy thing, one noteworthy thing they were involved in 2019. I know they feuded with Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross for a cup of coffee. No pun intended, because I know Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross like coffee. In the fall, I think, going into Night of Champions, Clash of Champions. But other than that, they have done nothing in 2019. I know they feuded with Asuka for, again, a cup of coffee at Fastlane, I think. Either that or Elimination Chamber. They lost then, too. And they were teasing a bigger story with them going into Mania, but it got squashed because WWE wanted the SmackDown Women's Championship involved in the main event. So they wanted the title involved in the main event. They took it off of Asuka, and Mandy and Sonya never really got the culmination of their story that they were teasing going into Mania. And they've done nothing since. So Mandy lost again here to Carmella. Pretty standard match. It lasted a little longer than the Carmella-Sonya match did last week, which went all of like a fucking minute. This was about 3 minutes, but it still really wasn't that good. This was a complete throwaway. I am liking what they're doing with Mandy and Otis. I'm not really sure whether Mandy's supposed to be a babyface or not. She's acting like a babyface in her backstage interactions with Otis. She's not acting like she's interested, but she's also not acting like, oh, get the fuck away from me, like she has in the past. She's kind of entertaining the idea of her and Otis being friends, but she'll still go out to the ring for her matches and berate Carmella during their matches. So again, I don't know what the hell is going on, but I am mildly intrigued. I will say that. Again, they tried out Bryan and Miz when Corbin was ruled, he was eliminated from the match because he was too hurt or something like that. They said that he couldn't compete. So it ended up being Bryan and Miz one-on-one before King Corbin's men, the people that carry him out to the ring, came out and interrupted the match and caused it to be thrown out and ruled a no contest before they did it again in the main event. So again, we tried to get the same match 3 times, and the first 2 times was a wash. This was a complete waste of a segment. If you were going to do this shit, then why not just wait until the main event? Why do what you did in the opening segment in here if you were always going to deliver that main event? Regardless. Again, it was a total waste of time, and I'm convinced they only did this to fill time on the show because they had no other idea. They didn't have any idea of what else to do on the show if it wasn't for this match. If they didn't try to do it again here. I was not a fan of that at all. I thought that was complete stupidity. But yeah, Corbin, Miz, and Bryan would meet later on in the night in that number one contenders triple threat match. So then we had Moment of Bliss, the grand return of Moment of Bliss on SmackDown for the first time probably in a few months. I know Alexa Bliss has been back now for about a month. But they never, I don't really think she's talked yet since she's been back over the last, 2 or 3 months. Over the last month that she's been back, but even prior to that, since she was away from TV, I don't really think we've seen her in a Moment of Bliss segment in a few months. But anyway, they hosted it here with Lacey Evans. And I thought, honestly, this was one of the better parts of the show. I thought Lacey came across great. She threatened Sasha for touching her daughter or really getting in her daughter's face last week on SmackDown, saying that she'll do anything to defend her daughter. I thought this was great. Lacey is honestly becoming a better babyface than she was a heel. And she was a pretty good heel. I thought her character work on Twitter, and she would always stay in character, was tremendous. Never really translated to much on TV, mind you, but I thought she did great work with her character on Twitter and on social media and whatnot. But even as a babyface, she's getting people behind her. People are getting behind Lacey, and she's only been a babyface for like 2 or 3 weeks. This is the type of stuff that we need with guys like Elias. Or, I don't know, people who really just turn on a whim for no reason. People like Elias. As of a couple weeks ago, apparently he's a babyface, and no one could give two shits. Lacey's a babyface, randomly out of the blue, but they're giving us a reason to care about her via segments like this. So I thought this was well done. The subsequent match was really nothing to write home about between Bayley, Sasha, Lacey, and Dana Brooke. I thought the match was all right, but nonetheless, I thought it was a decent match. Bayley and Sasha went over with Banks pinning Dana Brooke. You would probably argue, why didn't Lacey pick up the win for her team to maintain momentum? It's not a big deal. Sasha honestly needed the win. She has not won anything of importance in a long time. I looked back, the last match that she won, I think, was that 8-woman tag team match. They did on SmackDown, maybe not the SmackDown before Survivor Series. I think it was the show before that, on the 8th, I want to say. But she didn't even win for her team. It was Nikki Cross. So Sasha Banks has not really won anything in quite a few months. I think Sasha may have beaten Dana Brooke, or rather Nikki Cross the week before that, but even that wasn't an important match. This was kind of important. She won for her team. It was the right result. I had no issues with this. They're still clearly building the Lacey and Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship, probably at the Rumble, if not before then, maybe on the first episode of 2020. And if so, I really wish they would have advertised anything. I was going to say more, but really anything at all for that first show of 2020, because as of right now, we know nothing about that first show. It should feel like a big deal. It's the first WWE show of the new year. I don't think there's a new NXT next week. I think it's just a recap show, or they may be taping new matches. I don't know. As far as I know, there is not a new episode of NXT next week. So that will be the first live show for WWE in the new year. So the fact that nothing is announced is kind of puzzling to me. But we got our main event on this show. It's Daniel Bryan, The Miz, and King Corbin in a triple threat number one contenders match for the Universal Championship. I'm still getting the championships mixed up because the titles only switched shows a couple months ago. But still, I thought this was good. It did come down to Bryan and Miz after Corbin got eliminated. Not eliminated, but it wasn't an elimination match. Reigns came out, attacked Corbin again, and factored him out of the finish. So again, if they were going to do that, why the fuck would you do what you did earlier on in the show? With what they did with Corbin and Miz. It made absolutely no sense. Or Corbin and Reigns. Just save that for the end of the show. It was a total fucking waste. Thankfully, it turned out to be a pretty good match. The closing stretch with Miz and Bryan, considering their chemistry is so strong, I'm not surprised. I thought they had a pretty good match here, and I enjoyed it. So Bryan goes over, punches his ticket to the Rumble to face Bray Wyatt for the Universal Championship. Overall, a very dull show. I will mention this. I forgot to mention this earlier. They did run a video package with Ali. They had Sheamus talk again. I thought both of those things were good. I'm waiting for Sheamus to come back. Ali's video package talking about how disappointing his 2019 was between getting hurt, missing out on winning the Intercontinental Championship, missing out on winning the Money in the Bank ladder match, I thought was terrific. I love revisionist shit like that, where it's like, or retrospective shit, not revisionist, if that's even a word. retrospective video packages where they look back on the year that was for a certain superstar and how good it was or how bad it was, and they don't pretend like it doesn't matter or didn't happen. I thought that was great. So aside from that, the Lacey Evans stuff and the closing minutes of the main event, I thought this was a pretty forgettable show. Nothing worth seeing here, nothing advertised for next week, and that was your final SmackDown of 2019. We still have one more WWE show to go on Monday with Raw, so hopefully that will be better, especially since I will be there. But I should be back with another SmackDown review in the new year, the first SmackDown of 2020 next Saturday right here on the channel. So until then, guys, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. If you're listening to this on nextdaywrestling.net, then check out all the other content I have up here on the website, including my written review of SmackDown from Friday night. Until next time, guys, have a very happy holiday season, happy new year. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road in 2020.